It was 11:58 p.m. when I realized that my life as I knew it had been nothing but an illusion. I had always thought I was surrounded by love, warmth, and support. My parents, my friends, my coworkers, they were my family, my companions, my safe haven. I had built a world in which I felt secure, important, and untouchable. I had thought I knew everything about the people around me, that I could trust them blindly. But all of that was about to change in less than 2 minutes. My name is Aisha. And until that night, I believed that trust was unshakable. I believed that loyalty and love were constants in my life. I had no reason to doubt anyone. My childhood was happy, or so I had told myself. My teenage years were filled with friendships I thought were genuine. Even as an adult, I had believed that my life had a kind of stability that few people got to experience. I had a job I loved, a home I could call mine, and relationships I had nurtured carefully. It seemed perfect. Yet deep down, there had always been a whisper, a small, persistent feeling that I sometimes brushed aside. A glance that lingered too long, a hushed conversation just out of earshot, moments that didn't make sense at the time. I ignored them, rationalized them, pretended that my imagination was playing tricks on me. But now I understood. Those small, fleeting moments had been warning signs. They had been the cracks in the foundation, the threads that, when pulled, would unravel everything. That night was ordinarier, at least it should have been. I had spent the evening quietly at home, making tea, scrolling through my phone, catching up on messages that seemed mundane at the time. The world outside my window was dark and silent, the only sound being the occasional car passing on the street. I felt safe. I felt like my life was ordinary in the way that ordinary should be: predictable, comfortable, and untouched by betrayal. I didn't realize that betrayal was waiting, carefully timed, to strike at the very moment when my guard was at its lowest dot. Then, at 11:59 p.m., my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. My first reaction was irritation, the kind that comes from being disturbed when you want nothing but quiet. But curiosity, that dangerous little thing, made my fingers open it. A single file, a video. No introduction, no explanation, just a short caption: "Watch this. Your life isn't what you think." I hesitated. My pulse quickened. My stomach knotted with anticipation and fear. Part of me wanted to delete it immediately, to pretend it didn't exist. But another part, the part of me that had always been cautious and perceptive, told me to watch, to see, to know. I tapped the play button and my world stopped. The screen illuminated the room with a glow of betrayal. My family, my so-called loving family, sat together in a room I didn't recognize, speaking about me as though I were not there. They spoke about dividing my inheritance, erasing my name from everything I had worked for, planning my exclusion from decisions I should have been a part of. My friends, some of whom I had confided in, were there too, smiling, nodding, laughing quietly as they plotted my oblivion. I couldn't breathe. I felt as if someone had knocked the air out of me. My hands shook. Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring the faces on the screen, blurring my vision, blurring the world I had trusted. The sense of shock, of disbelief, of anger, and grief collided inside me. How could they do this? How could everyone I loved betray me? How could they treat me like a ghost in my own life? The seconds stretched into eternity. I felt every heartbeat, every rapid pulse in my chest, every tremor of shock. I realized that for years, I had been a shadow. I had existed on the margins of my own life, never fully seen, never fully considered. Every smile, every hug, every word of comfort now felt like part of a performance, designed to keep me ignorant until the moment of ultimate betrayal. And yet, beneath the shock, beneath the grief, a spark ignited. A fire that was cold and precise, burning not from anger alone, but from the clarity of knowing that I had been wronged. I wasn't going to vanish quietly. I wasn't going to let them erase me without consequence. I would reclaim what was mine. I would expose the truth. And I would make them understand that the woman they thought powerless was already planning her. Come back, in the minutes that followed, I replayed the recording again and again, trying to memorize every detail. Every word, every glance. I needed to understand the full extent of what had been done behind my back. I took notes in my phone, listing names, dates, and moments that could prove critical. I needed proof, but also strategy. I couldn't confront them blindly. That would be foolish. I had to be meticulous. I had to plan. I spent the night awake, pacing my apartment, thinking about how many years of my life had been a lie. How many decisions had been made about me without my knowledge? How many times had I been manipulated, smiled at, consoled, all while people plotted my erasure? My mind, once calm and orderly, now churned with questions, strategies, possibilities. The shock was giving way to purpose. I would not be the victim they expected. I would not crumble. I would fight, and I would win not with brute force, but with precision, patience, and evidence. By the time dawn approached, I had made my first decisions. I would start by gathering proof, by confirming every suspicion that the recording had revealed. I would find out who was truly loyal and who was a traitor. I would uncover the network of deceit that had surrounded me my entire life, and I would document it all carefully, silently, until the moment when I could strike back, not in rage, but with undeniable truth. The next morning, the world outside seemed impossibly bright, as if mocking the darkness that had descended on my life the night before. I tried to go through the motions, make breakfast, check emails, answer a few work messages, but every sound, every face, every thought reminded me of the recording. I couldn't stop replaying it in my head. The laughter, the whispers, the certainty with which they had planned to erase MIT all haunted me. I realized quickly that I needed more than memory. I needed proof. I needed facts. I couldn't rely on feelings or assumptions anymore. The recording had been a spark, but I needed the fire to be fueled by undeniable evidence. My first step was to retrace my own life, carefully, quietly, and observe the people I had trusted the most. I needed to understand how deeply the betrayal ran. I started with my family. I called my mother as casually as I could, asking about her day, about trivial matters. Nothing that could reveal my suspicions. She sounded normal, warm even, but I noticed the small cracks, the hesitation in her voice, the pauses that seemed too deliberate, the way she carefully avoided certain topics. It was subtle, but it confirmed part of what I feared. They had been hiding things for years, and now I had to expose the pattern. Next were my so-called friends. I messaged a few innocuous greetings, seeing how they responded. Some replied instantly, overly cheerful, almost rehearsed. Others were slow, distant, but then too casual in their explanations. I began noting everything, every inconsistency, for every phrase that hinted at secrets, every smile that didn't reach the eyes. It was exhausting, but necessary. Then came the realization that cut even deeper. This betrayal wasn't new. It had been in the making for years. I remembered certain events that now seemed suspicious. Family gatherings where decisions were made without me. Conversations I wasn't allowed to hear. Opportunities I was inexplicably excluded from. Even at work, small manipulations had been happening, subtle enough that I had thought I was imagining things. But now, it all made sense. They had been isolating me slowly, carefully, so that when the time came, I would be entirely alone, entirely powerless, and entirely unaware. I spent days combing through emails, old messages, and bank statements, looking for patterns, clues, and hidden communications. Every hidden receipt, every misdirected email, every odd text became a piece of the puzzle. The more I discovered, the more the scope of the betrayal widened. Some of my closest friends had been complicit, deliberately keeping me in the dark while plotting my exclusion. Even people I had trusted with my deepest secrets had smiled in my face, while taking steps to erase me. The anger was almost unbearable at first. It was a heavy, suffocating weight pressing against my chest. I wanted to scream, to cry, to confront them all immediately, but I knew better. That would have been predictable. That would have given them power over me again. No, I had to stay composed. I had to be patient. I had to gather every scrap of evidence, every detail, every proof I could find. Only then would I strike, and when I did, it would be undeniable. Late one night, I sat alone in my apartment, laptop open, notes scattered across the table. I mapped out relationships, motives, and timelines. I had realized something horrifying. Their betrayal was systematic. It wasn't just about money, inheritance, or possessions. It was about control. They wanted me erased completely, my identity rewritten without my consent, my voice silenced, my presence ignored. The shock was terrifying, but it also fueled a growing determination inside me. I would not allow them to succeed. I would not disappear quietly. The more I investigated, the more unexpected truths came to light. There were people I had trusted blindly who had been part of the plot from the beginning. I found messages from my so-called friends discussing how to manipulate my decisions, how to make me doubt myself, how to isolate me gradually. There were financial decisions made in secret, signatures forged, and plans set to ensure I had no claim or influence over anything I had thought was mine. It was all laid bare now, and I couldn't unsee it. And yet, amid the fury and heartbreak, a plan began to form. I realized that revenge wasn't just about exposing them, it was about reclaiming control. It was about proving that I was not powerless, that I could still make my life my own, that they could not erase me from existence. I started thinking about the tools at my disposal: proof, strategy, timing. I didn't need violence or confrontation. I needed leverage, precision, and patience. I decided to start small. I would gather undeniable evidence first, so that when the confrontation came, it could be no denial, no justification, no escape. Every email, every recording, every hidden conversation would become ammunition. I would document everything meticulously, silently, without alerting anyone. They had underestimated me, thinking my shock would paralyze me, that my tears would define me. But they were wrong. Shock could be controlled, grief could be harnessed, and tears could be transformed into focus. Over the next few days, I followed leads, carefully observing everyone around me. Every detail mattered. Every word, every gesture, every pattern of behavior became a clue. I discovered more than I had expected. The betrayal was deeper and wider than I could have imagined. Some had been plotting openly, while others had played the role of loyal friends, hiding their intentions behind false smiles. I felt a strange mix of horror and exhilaration. Horror at the depth of deceit. Exhilaration at the clarity of the plan that was forming in my mind. By the end of the week, I had a list. Names, dates, events, recordings, messages, all meticulously organized. I had a map of betrayal, and it gave me power. I realized that while they had thought they were erasing me, they had inadvertently handed me the tools to reclaim everything. It was ironic, almost poetic. The same people who had plotted my downfall were the ones who would ultimately prove their guilt beyond doubt. And so, the quiet part of me, the patient, meticulous part, began to take control. I no longer felt like a victim. I no longer felt helpless. I was a Shava woman they thought powerless. And I was preparing to remind them of that fact in a way that would be unforgettable. Asterisk, by the time the following week arrived, I had become almost unrecognizable to myself. The shock, the grief, and the anger had merged into something far sharper: focus. I moved through my days like a ghost, carefully observing, silently taking note of every detail. Every pattern, every hint of weakness in those who had betrayed me. I was no longer just Aisha. The woman they thought powerless. I was a strategist, a watcher, and the storm waiting to break. The first move was subtle. I reached out to one of my oldest friends, Zara, the one I had trusted more than anyone outside of my family. She had been on the recording, smiling as they discussed my exclusion. I needed to test her. I wanted to see how far she would go to hide the truth, how easily she could be rattled. I invited her for coffee, casual, innocent, with no hint of suspicion. As soon as she arrived, I watched her like a hawk. The smile on her face was practiced, too smooth, too bright. She asked about work, about my family, about life, and I answered carefully, giving just enough information to seem normal, to seem unaware. But I watched her reactions to every word, every gesture. and I noticed the small tells, the hesitation before she spoke. The subtle glance around the cafe, the way she touched her phone almost compulsively, as if she were expecting a message confirming her lies. I asked her casually about my cousin, about my brother, about mutual friends, probing lightly. Each answer she gave was carefully constructed, but cracks were already forming. I smiled politely, sipping my tea, letting her slip, letting her stumble over words, letting her sense that I was aware without ever revealing it fully. By the time she left, I had what I needed: confirmation that the web of deceit was active, that it was fragile, and that a single spark in the right place could set it all ablaze. Over the next few days, I continued my quiet reconnaissance. I revisited places where secrets had been kept, conversations had been whispered, and decisions had been made. Every location, every familiar face became part of my investigation. I began to gather the additional proof I needed. Old messages that had been deleted but were recoverable. Emails hidden in obscure folders. Financial documents tucked away in overlooked files. Every piece of information was a thread, and I was weaving them into a net that could trap everyone who had betrayed me. Then came the most difficult part: patience. I had to be careful not to rush, not to reveal my awareness too soon. They believed I was still shocked, still grieving, still vulnerable. They didn't know that the woman they thought broken was already plotting her precise, calculated counter. I could not confront them directly, not yet. I had to watch, to wait, okay, and to let them continue revealing their guilt through their own arrogance. One evening, I decided to test my family. I sent a casual message to my mother, mentioning a minor investment decision I had supposedly made. I watched as she hesitated, then quickly corrected herself, pretending to offer advice. Pretending to be unaware of what I knew. My father, I learned, had already assumed I had no knowledge of their schemes. My brother had been counting on my ignorance to secure a personal advantage. And in their overconfidence, they made mistakes. Small mistakes, but critical. Every misstep I observed fed into the strategy forming in my mind. I also began reaching out to external contacts, lawyers, accountants, and colleagues who had unknowingly been part of their plans provided me with information I had not expected. Each conversation, conducted with innocence and calm, gave me leverage. I collected contracts, recorded conversations, and obtained documents that, when combined, would form an indisputable chain of proof. Amid all this, the psychological game became as important as the evidence. I sent carefully worded messages, seemingly casual, to gauge reactions. I noticed tension in text responses, hesitation in voice calls, subtle slips in conversation. They were nervous now, without knowing why. They could sense that something had shifted, even if they didn't know what. That shift, that subtle unease, gave me power. I was no longer the one being manipulated. I was the manipulator now. Then, late one night, as I was reviewing the growing pile of evidence, a thought struck me. The final act had to be timed perfectly. Too soon, and it would lack impact. Too late, and they might regain control. I needed a moment when everyone involved would be completely unaware, when the reveal would be undeniable, inescapable, and irreversible. That moment, I decided, would be dramatic, symbolic, and utterly shattering. I started visualizing the confrontation. Not violent, not chaotic, but precise. A staged exposure that would leave no room for denial. I imagined the looks on their faces, the disbelief, the attempts to rationalize, and the final undeniable acceptance of the truth. I imagined standing in the center, calm, composed, commanding, as the people who had tried to erase me realized that the woman they had underestimated was now in full control. The planning consumed me, but it also empowered me. With each day, with each piece of evidence, with each careful psychological move, I grew stronger. I was no longer defined by what had been done to me. I was defined by what I was capable of now, by the meticulous strategy I had constructed in the shadows. The fire that had sparked at midnight when I first saw the recording was now a roaring blaze, controlled and directed toward the inevitable climax. And yet I was careful to maintain appearances. To the outside world, I was still Aisha, the same woman who smiled politely at family gatherings, who responded to friends' messages with casual warmth, who appeared unshaken. But behind that calm exterior, I was orchestrating a plan so precise that it would leave no room for escape, no room for lies, no room for doubt. Every move, every observation, every calculated interaction was bringing me closer to the moment when the truth would finally be undeniable. I started leaving small breadcrumbs, subtle hints that someone was watching, that someone knew. A message here, a phone call there, an offhand comment during casual conversation, all carefully placed to unsettle them, to make them question whether their secrets were still safe. The tension grew almost imperceptibly, but enough that I could sense it. They were beginning to feel the first taste of fear, the first awareness that they were no longer fully in control. As the days passed, the anticipation built inside me. The web of deceit they had spun was now fully exposed to me, thread by thread, and I was ready to tighten it. I knew exactly what needed to be done, who needed to see what, and how the revelation should unfold. The stage was set, the actors were in place, and the script was mine. I would not stumble. I would not falter. I would not be denied justice. By the time the following week arrived, everything had shifted. The calm exterior I had maintained was now armor. Every interaction, every word, every subtle gesture was calculated. I wasn't just living among them anymore. I was observing, planning, and moving pieces on a board they didn't even know existed. They still thought they had erased me. They still thought I was shocked, vulnerable, helpless. But I had become something else entirely, a force they had underestimated. I began with small but deliberate moves. At first, it was subtle messages sent at unexpected hours, casual mentions of things I shouldn't know, remarks dropped in conversation that hinted at knowledge too precise to be innocent. Each time, I watched them carefully. Their reactions were telling. Eyes darting, pauses too long, words faltering. Even my own family, the people who had plotted my erasure, couldn't hide the slightest tension. It was intoxicating. I realized that fear doesn't always announce itself with shouting. Sometimes it is quieter. A hesitant glance, a stiff smile, a subtle twitch in the hand. And that fear, however small, was mine to wield. The next step involved leveraging the evidence I had collected. I started by contacting a trusted lawyer, framing my questions and requests as if I were double-checking mundane details. Every document I gathered, every recording I obtained, strengthened the foundation of my plan. The more I had, the more I realized that their overconfidence had been their greatest mistake. They had believed that secrecy was enough to protect them, and in doing so, they had built a trap for themselves. Then came the psychological part. The delicate art of letting them feel the pressure without knowing why. I started sharing what seemed like small victories at work, subtle hints that things were not as hidden as they believed. I would casually mention conversations, small decisions, and minor events that I had witnessed or uncovered. Each time I watched them squirm, their composure cracking ever so slightly. It was enough to remind them that I was no longer powerless and that they were no longer safe in their deception. At the same time, began to confront the closest betrayers indirectly. Zara, my former friend, became my first test. I sent her a message that appeared casual, asking about something she had spoken of in the past, something she had clearly tried to hide. Her response was immediate but tense, over-explaining in a way that revealed anxiety. That small victory was telling. It wasn't enough to expose her fully, but it was a start. I could feel the web tightening. Every reaction a confirmation that my plan was working. I also decided to take control of information in a way they could never anticipate. I began sending innocuous but precise hints to others. People they trusted, making it clear that I had knowledge they assumed was hidden. Each hint, each carefully placed remark, created ripples. Those ripples were small but unmistakable. I was no longer simply reacting. I was orchestrating. I was the conductor, and they were unwitting participants in a symphony of revelation at home. I spent long hours reviewing and organizing. I mapped out every connection, every lie, every hidden agenda, created a comprehensive picture of the betrayal. Names, dates, conversations. Recordings all aligned to form a web so precise that the truth would hit them with undeniable force. The process was painstaking. But each day brought me closer to the ultimate moment of exposure. And then came the decision. Timing. I realized that the final reveal had to be dramatic, symbolic, unforgettable. It couldn't be rushed and it couldn't be sloppy. I would wait until everyone believed I was still vulnerable, still in shock, still unaware. Then when the stage was perfectly set, I would strike not with anger or vengeance, but with clarity and precision. I would show them the consequences of underestimating me. The next move involved creating controlled situations to test their reactions further. At family gatherings, I subtly mentioned matters only I could know. At work, I asked questions that seemed casual, but hinted at knowledge beyond what they expected. Every reaction was carefully noted, cataloged, and stored for the final confrontation. The cracks were becoming visible, and with each one, my confidence grew. Even as I executed these subtle maneuvers, I remained vigilant. I knew that any mistake, any hint that I was fully aware too soon, could give them time to regroup, to cover tracks, to deflect blame. Precision was key. Patience was essential. The thrill of control was intoxicating, but I tempered it with discipline. I was no longer the shocked, betrayed woman from that first night. I was Aya, the one in command, and I would not falter. There were moments, though, when doubt crept in. I wondered if I had underestimated them, if someone would see through my careful orchestration. But each time I reminded myself of the evidence, of the meticulous planning, of the undeniable clarity I now possessed. Fear was no longer my companion. Awareness was my ally, and focus was my weapon. By the time the days passed, I had set the stage for the first major move. It would be subtle but powerful, designed to unsettle and destabilize. I knew exactly who needed to witness what, and in what order. I knew exactly how each reaction would unfold. I was no longer reacting. I was controlling. I was setting the dominoes in place, waiting for the perfect moment when they would all begin to fall. And finally, the anticipation became almost unbearable. I felt the thrill of impending revelation with every fiber of my being. I had transformed from the shocked, betrayed woman they had tried to erase into a force of deliberate, calculated power. The storm that had begun at midnight months ago was now fully formed. I was ready to unleash it, and nothing could stop me. Asterisk, the day finally came. Months of careful planning, subtle moves, patient observation, and psychological strategy all led to this moment. I woke early, my mind clear, my heart steady, and my focus sharp. The woman who had sat in shock at midnight, betrayed, alone, and erased, was gone. In her place stood Aisha, the one who had waited, who had prepared, who had become the force they had never anticipated. I arrived at the family gathering. They had organized for a trivial celebration, something insignificant that they thought I would attend without suspicion. They smiled as I entered, faces bright with their practiced warmth, eyes too casual, too confident. But I could see the tremor in their smiles, the slight hesitation in their gestures. Their overconfidence had begun to crack. I greeted them with calm politeness, each word measured, each movement deliberate. Every smile I returned, every laugh I offered, was a mask. Beneath it, my mind cataloged everything's the smallest expressions. The shifts in tone, the micro-reactions that confirmed what I had long suspected. And then subtly, I began to drop hints. Casual remarks about details they assumed I didn't know. Questions about decisions that had been made without my consent at first. They laughed nervously, attempting to maintain control. But I could see the tension building, the uncertainty growing. The dominoes were beginning to fall. I had set this chain of revelations in motion weeks ago, and now it was unfolding with precision. Every subtle remark I made, every glance I gave, carried the weight of the truth I had gathered. Then, I revealed the first piece of concrete evidence. I pulled out a document, carefully presented as if it were part of casual conversation. The room went quiet. Eyes widened. Hesitation replaced confidence. They asked questions, tried to rationalize. But each question I answered only tightened the web of undeniable proof around them. Every signature, every email, every recording corroborated what I had known all along. I could see their panic, the scramble to maintain composure, the futile attempts to justify what could no longer be justified. They had assumed I would crumble, that the shock of betrayal would leave me silent and powerless. They had assumed wrong. Now I was in control. Next, I revealed recordings, pieces of conversations carefully edited and timed, showed how they had plotted my exclusion, how friends I had trusted had colluded, and how my family had deliberately erased me from decisions, inheritance, and events. The reaction was immediate: disbelief, anger, attempts to interrupt, to deflect. But I remained calm. Each interruption, each protest only confirmed the accuracy of my revelations. They had trapped themselves in their own arrogance. I watched as Zara, my former friend, shifted uncomfortably, trying to avoid my gaze. My mother's face paled and my father's shoulders stiffened. My brother's confidence wavered. Every carefully hidden expression betrayed the guilt I had suspected. And in that room, surrounded by the people who had once believed they could erase me, I felt a surge of vindication tempered with satisfaction, not cruelty. I continued piece by piece, revealing the evidence I had meticulously collected. The room grew tense, the air heavy with the weight of undeniable truth. No excuses, no lies, no rationalizations could save them now. I spoke calmly, articulately, precisely. I allowed the silence to punctuate the impact of each revelation. Each pause, each calculated beat, amplified the gravity of what I was showing. As the hours passed, I could see the final realization settle in their eyes. They understood, finally, that their schemes had failed. The woman they had tried to erase was not only present, but she was empowered, prepared, and resolute. The shock in their expressions was mirrored by a dawning fear they had underestimated me completely. And in that moment, I understood the true power of patience, of strategy, of knowledge combined with precise action. Asterisk. The aftermath of the confrontation was profound. Relationships fractured irreparably. Alliances built on deception crumbled instantly. I had exposed the network of betrayal not with violence or rage, but with evidence, precision, and control. My position, my rights, and my voice were restored. They could no longer manipulate, exclude, or deceive me. I had reclaimed my life, not just through revelation, but through the undeniable assertion of truth. And yet, even in victory, I felt a deep, sobering realization. The betrayal I had experienced had left scars that could not be ignored. Trust, once broken, is never easily restored. People change, alliances shift, and the world can be cruel and deceptive. But within that pain lay strength. Within that betrayal lay the foundation for resilience. I had survived, I had adapted, and I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more aware of the forces around me as I walked away from the confrontation. I understood that revenge, in its most powerful form, is not about destruction, it is about reclaiming control, asserting truth, and protecting oneself from further harm. The lesson was clear. Awareness and strategy can turn even the deepest betrayal into a source of empowerment. And in that understanding, I found peace not in the suffering of others, but in the undeniable reclamation of my own life. Asterisk after the confrontation. Life did not immediately return to normal, but in truth, nothing would ever be normal again. The people who had betrayed me were still there, in the same spaces, living their lives, but the balance had shifted completely. They no longer held power over me, and their confidence had been broken. I had reclaimed my life, my voice, and my dignity. And yet the victory came with quiet contemplation. I spent the following days reflecting on what had happened. Sitting alone in my apartment, I revisited the events in my mind. The shock of that midnight revelation, the months of investigation, the careful orchestration of every move, and the final confrontation. It had been a journey of emotions: anger, grief, disbelief, fear, determination, and ultimately, empowerment. Each emotion had been necessary, shaping the person I had become. I thought about trust, and how easily it can be broken. How people we believe to love us can betray us for reasons we cannot always understand. But I also thought about strength, how it is built in moments of adversity, forged in the fires of betrayal, and refined through patience and careful action. I had learned that power does not come from intimidation or control over others. It comes from clarity, preparation, and the courage to face truth, no matter how painful. Even in moments of doubt, I realized that my journey had given me something no betrayal could take away: awareness. I understood now who valued me genuinely, who was capable of loyalty, and who had hidden agendas. That knowledge, painful as it was, became a tool. I was no longer a shadow in my own life. I was present, vigilant, and fully aware of the dynamics around me. Some days, I allowed myself to feel sorrow for the relationships I had lost, for the illusions that had been shattered, for the time I had spent trusting people who had been planning my exclusion. But alongside that sorrow, I also felt pride. Pride that I had endured, that I had transformed shock into strategy, grief into determination, and betrayal into empowerment. I had become the person they had underestimated, Dan, that had made all the difference. In the weeks that followed, I rebuilt my life on my terms. I reconnected with people who had been genuine, distanced myself from those who had proven toxic, and strengthened my independence financially, emotionally, and socially. I took control of decisions that had previously been manipulated, and I made choices that aligned with my true values. The experience had been devastating, but it had also been transformative. Looking back, I realized the most important lesson: betrayal, while painful, is not the end. It is a catalyst. It exposes hidden truths, illuminates false alliances, and forces growth. And growth, when nurtured, creates resilience, self-awareness, and clarity of purpose. I had learned that revenge is not about inflicting pain. It is about reclaiming life, asserting truth, and establishing boundaries that protect oneself from further harm. I still remember the first night I saw the recording, the shock that left me paralyzed. But now I no longer see it as a moment of defeat. It was the moment my transformation began. It was the spark that ignited a fire of strategy, strength, and empowerment. From betrayal came clarity. From manipulation came control. And from exclusion came a renewed sense of purpose. I had been written out of everything, erased from decisions, and underestimated for years. But in the end, I reclaimed not just what was taken, but who I was meant to be. I was no longer the person who believed in everyone blindly. I was stronger, wiser, and more discerning. I had taken the narrative of my life back into my own hands. And the most important lesson I carry with me now is this: trust carefully, observe diligently, and never underestimate your own power. Life will challenge you, people will betray you, and the world will test your resolve. But in every trial lies an opportunity to learn, to grow, to reclaim what is rightfully yours. I am Aisha, and though they tried to erase me, I emerged not just intact, but unstoppable. I now walk forward with a clarity I had never known. Betrayal is no longer a shadow over my life. It is a reminder of strength, resilience, and the power of patience. The midnight recording, once a source of devastation, is now a symbol of transformation. And as I move forward, I do so with certainty, purpose, and the unshakable knowledge that no one can diminish me again. Asterisk.